This week at church, Pastor Robin McKinley begins his new series, The Inside Out Way of Jesus.
I think she gave this a lot of thought. I think she might have walked to the door 2 or 3 times and turned around and walked away and then thought, I'm just going to go in. I'm just going to go in.
You can join us every Sunday morning at 10 a.m. on 426 Laurelwood Road in Pottstown, right by the Coventry Mall. We'd also love to hear from you. If this ministry has touched you in any way, send us an email at info@c3pottstown.com. We hope you enjoy today's message.
We are starting a new series today, Inside Out, the inside out ways of Jesus. The inside out way of Jesus. And before we get started, did you ever have those old wives' tales that maybe you have lived by, your mom has lived by, your mom got you to live by, her mom lived by, you know what I'm talking about? I remember one time we were someplace and Cindy says, we got to get this kind of juice, and we were with this other lady and she says, that's an old wives' tale, don't you? Oh, man. We've been doing this all this time and it's not even, let me give you some of them, okay? Hydrogen peroxide. Used to be everybody had a bottle of hydrogen peroxide in their medicine cabinet, in their bathroom someplace. And it turns out that those healing bubbles, I always thought they were neat. You have a cut and you put them on and it just bubbles up, I didn't know it was eating my finger away. They were actually attacking the body. According to research, hydrogen peroxide can cause cellular damage and actually extend the healing process. Well, here's another one. Cracking your knuckles will give you arthritis. How many of you were told by that by your mothers? Yeah. Well, turns out that the latest cracking knuckles research, that's probably a $1 million grant by the government. I don't know. But cracking your knuckles does not cause arthritis. A California doctor named Donald Unger, for 60 years, experimented on himself. He cracked his knuckles on his left hand twice a day and didn't crack his knuckles at all on his right hand. Some 438,000 times he cracked his knuckles on the left hand. When he compared them, the right hand and the left hand were exactly the same. No difference at all. And let me do one more. Did your mom ever tell you, don't swallow your gum because it takes how many years? 7 years to digest. Oh, man. As a kid, do you remember working at not swallowing your gum, but you just couldn't help it? And then you got this thing, oh no, it's in there for 7 years. We lived with this weight on our shoulders, with the fear that gum was piling up in our stomach. Oh man. Oh, I think we ought to dismiss. Well, there's been, shockingly enough, research done on this through colonoscopy research, to find out that it does not take gum that long to go through your system. There. Now, what's my point here? My point is that we have just accepted certain things, we just go along with them, and we not only accept them, we pass them on to our children, and we find that these things are reinforced by people around us. How many here knew that we were told it takes gum 7 years to digest? How many knew that before I said it? Yeah, and we are from different parts of the country. So it's like widespread. It's reinforced by the culture. But there are still more serious things that we have to put up with. I mean, one day my wife was witnessing to a person, and the response she got from this person was, "I am doing everything my church is telling me to do." We just accept what we are being told. And I knew what that church taught. So if you studied the ministry of Jesus, here's what you find. He spent a significant amount of his time exposing the myths that people had been taught about God and about faith. He would say things like this: "You've heard it said like this, but I'm going to tell you something different." He confronted some false beliefs about faith, false beliefs about religion and about God, things that people just plain accepted because they were told about it. So, what we're going to see in this series is that many of the spiritual leaders of Jesus' day made the focus on the exterior of man instead of the inside of man or woman. Meaning that you have your act together and your appearance looks great for people around you, even while you are following rituals that are doing you no good. Jesus came along with the message, "I know you've been told what's on the outside, it's what's on the outside, but that's not what it's about. It's about what is on the inside. And then what is on the inside will come out to the outside." For many of us, we've learned to keep track of how we're doing on the outside. We've learned to keep up appearances, to make sure that we have a smile on our face. And everything is good and that we don't have any problems. At least we make it look like that. And God says, man may look on the outside, the exterior. But God says, I look on the heart. So instead of looking like you have it all together, He wants you to have authentic worship. Instead of carefully observing all the religious rituals, He wants an intimate relationship. And instead of acting more righteous than you really are, He wants to see in you brokenness. Let's talk about brokenness for a moment. Brokenness, I'm starting your notes now if you're following along. Brokenness is not something we aspire to. It's not something, I think I'll do brokenness today. No. You don't want to write broken on your resume. Brokenness doesn't work well in the boardroom. We live in a culture that's been termed a throwaway culture. I don't know if you've ever heard that expression before, but everything it seems like, is throwaway. We don't value repairing and fixing, making new. I mean, our toaster broke last month. It just didn't work anymore. We didn't take it to the fix-it shop and get someone to fix our toaster. We threw it away and just got another one. That's the society we're living in. Throw things away. And when someone is broken, they feel their value declines. And they feel that others are throwing them away. But this isn't the way things work in the spiritual realm. God puts a premium on broken people. The word "on" is supposed to be in there. I see I've made an error. God puts a premium on broken people. When God sees broken, He sees beautiful. And we're going to see an example of that in Luke chapter 7. So if you want to turn there, Luke chapter 7, we're going to start reading with verse 36. Verse 36 says, "When one of the Pharisees invited Jesus to have dinner with him, he went to the Pharisee's house and reclined at the table." Now Simon was a Pharisee, and as a religious leader, it was his duty to invite a visiting rabbi, invite Jesus over to his home to eat. And it's obvious Simon's heart wasn't into that, and we'll show you that in just a little bit. But Simon doesn't give him any kind of greeting whatsoever. I mean, not even a handshake from what we read. In those days, it would have been a kiss on the cheek or a kiss on the hand. He doesn't do any of that. Simon doesn't make sure the feet of Jesus are washed, which was the minimum thing that he could have done, especially if you're a guest in the house. And if you're wanting to especially honor a guest, you might give them some olive oil, which was an inexpensive gesture that they could anoint their head with. And Simon does none of these things, not one of them. But then there's a woman who comes in the scene. Verse 37 says, "A woman in that town who lived a sinful life learned that Jesus was eating at the Pharisee's house. So she came there with an alabaster jar of perfume." Now, verse 37 said that she lived a sinful life. She was a sinner. You know, that's exactly the same as saying she was a prostitute. She would have never in 1,000 years been invited to that dinner party. In fact, she kind of went in there on her own, knowing that she would be rejected by the people that were in there. It wasn't a safe place for her. She would have avoided places like that at all costs. But she knew Jesus was in there. And I don't know what attracted her to Jesus. I don't know if she had seen him heal somebody, seen him cast a demon out, maybe of one of her friends. I don't know if she had just heard him speak as he was speaking to the crowds, but something attracted her to Jesus. She knew how the people in that dinner party would look at her because she was broken beyond repair. A Pharisee would have looked at her as a throwaway thing. Get rid of her. She doesn't need to be in our society. But somehow, she knows that's not how Jesus is going to see her. And she takes the chance. She takes the plunge and walks into Simon's house. Now, serving Jesus will often embarrass others. Have you ever been embarrassed by someone who decided they were going to speak for Jesus? So she's going to do something that's very, many would say, impulsive. I don't think it was probably that impulsive. I think she gave this a lot of thought. I think she might have walked to the door 2 or 3 times and turned around and walked away and then thought, I'm just going to go in. I'm just going to go in. It's embarrassing. It's inappropriate. It's unacceptable according to the Pharisees that are there. As she stands at the filthy feet of Jesus. You never think about Jesus' feet being dirty, do you? But she was there, standing behind Jesus at his feet. And as she's standing there at his dirty feet, she can probably feel the stares like daggers coming at her, stares of condemnation. She sees that they are embarrassed that she is there. They're totally embarrassed. But who's going to say anything because Jesus hasn't rejected her and he's the guest of honor? And Jesus, he lets her know in some way, and we don't know. It might have been just the way he looked at her. He let her know in some way she is welcome. She's delighted he's come. He's delighted she's come. In verse 38 it says, as she stood behind him at his feet weeping, she began to wet his feet with her tears. Then she wiped them with her hair, kissed them, and poured perfume on them. As the tears from her eyes land on his dirty feet, and this dust starts to turn into mud on his feet, she knows what she needs to do. Nobody offered her a basin of water. Nobody offered her a wash rag or a towel. So she does something that isn't done in the public. She lets down her hair. See, that's something that women would do at home at night, just in the presence of her husband. But there in the midst of this party, she lets down her hair, and as she begins to wash the feet of Jesus with her tears, she dries his feet with her hair. Then she kisses his feet, and she brought this perfume in, and there's a possibility she had to break the container to get the perfume out. But whatever she did, open it, break it, or whatever, she didn't just anoint his feet with perfume, she poured on the perfume. She pours it all out. And with it, her whole life is poured out there with Jesus. She's broken. It was inappropriate. It was reckless. It was impulsive. And here's what Simon thought about the whole thing. Look at this, 39. Well, if this man were a prophet, he would have known who's touching him and what kind of woman she is. That she is a sinner. Jesus sees her brokenness, though is beautiful. Jesus commends this prostitute. He rebukes Simon the Pharisee. So you've got this religious leader. He's got his whole act together. He follows all the rules. He does everything he's supposed to do, and Jesus rebukes him. And he ends the story by giving this lady incredible value, incredible purpose. He says, your sins are forgiven. Your faith has saved you. Go in peace. I told someone earlier this week when I was putting it together that the tears were rolling down. I thought I had it out of my system, but I guess I don't. So think about this story. Who would you like to be? Would you like to be Simon the Pharisee? Well respected, follow the rules, does everything he's supposed to do. Everything is right on the outside. Or would you rather be the prostitute, the throwaway person who's a broken mess, but yet experiences the love and the grace of Jesus in a very deep way? Think about that for a moment, because I'm going to give you the answer of what most of us would rather do. Most of us would just as soon have both. We want to be well respected and have it all together, and for people to think a certain thing about us, whether it's true or not. And we want to keep our problems behind closed doors. And when we're in the public, we want to make sure we have a smile on our face and that there's no issues. We want to be that person, but yet we also want to experience the love and the grace of Jesus. Well, can I tell you something? It just doesn't work that way. If you want to be made whole, you've got to be broken. Not broke, broken. Simon was broke. Simon was broke. He's not broken. The point of this message isn't to be broke. Can I let you in on something? We're already broke. All of us. The point of the message is brokenness. We stop trying to pretend that the pieces fit together. Instead, we say, God, this is it. Here are the broken pieces. If we can't come to that place, friends, we are broke. We are broke. Look around you. Everybody here is broken. I don't know how impressive they look on the outside, but I'm telling you, we are all broken. You see, we are those people who ignore the hurts of others as long as our needs are taken care of. We are those people who yell at each other in the car on the way to church, and when we get out, we pretend like everything is just fine. We are those people who think God is somehow more impressed because we've come up with a whole list of our own rules and we aren't even living what's in the Bible. We are those people who go into debt to keep up appearances. We are those people who look down on others because they're different from us in some way. We're those people who work 50 plus hours a week trying to prove our worth. We're those people who have punched holes in our closet doors. We're those people who spend hours on social media trying to convince people our lives are somehow better than they really are. We are those people. We're broken. We're all broken. And what we need is brokenness. You see, brokenness is recognizing the reality of our broken condition. And so that's the bad news. I would never stop there because I want to tell you the good news. The good news is that Jesus came to make us all whole. He came to make us whole. Isaiah tells us, but he was pierced for our transgressions. He was crushed for our iniquities. The punishment that brought us peace was on him, and by his wounds we are healed. Don't be like the Pharisee. He was just plain broke, thinking everything in his life was all together. When you realize that you are broke, then you can come before the Lord broken. And that, my friend, is brokenness. Another name for that is humble. Standing before the Lord is an open book. What happens is we think we have everything together by looking like we have no problems. That's how we let our light shine. No problems, no challenges. In reality, our light shines the brightest when our life is broken. We all have struggles. We have failures. We have disappointments. Some of you think that you're the only one going through something. I've gotten phone calls. How come nobody is going through things like I go through things? People talk to Cindy. I'm the only one who has any problems in the church. She has heard that more than a few times. I'm the only one. No. We're all going through things. Maybe not as bad as what you're experiencing right now. But friends, God wants brokenness in your life so He can do with you what He did with that woman. The woman who was given grace and mercy from the Lord. So this morning we're going to have an altar call. Are we doing anything else up here? We're going to have an altar call today. And it's about brokenness. As we come to this altar this morning, we want to come and lift one another up. We want to pray for one another, and we want to encourage one another. Each of us come to this altar. And when we come, we're not coming, look who I am. We're coming, look who Jesus is. Look what Jesus has done in my life. And what Jesus has done with me, He'll do with you, because I'm going to pray for you. I know some of you are going through issues. I know some of you are going through some things that you would just as soon make it look like you're not. This is the safest place on the face of the earth, in church, among brothers and sisters in Jesus, seeking a Lord who loves you and wants everything good for you. All things work together for good, the Bible tells us. What you're going through today, which I don't know what it is, and we don't have confessional booths. We don't have a place that you have to spew your guts out to anybody except to Jesus. Come to Him. You come to this altar, and if you want to weep before the Lord, you weep before the Lord. If you want to shout to the Lord, you shout to the Lord. Don't shout at Him. Shout to Him. If you want to come to this altar this morning and you just want to be quiet before the Lord, maybe in thanksgiving, you come and be thankful, and you come and be quiet. You come. If you want prayer, you go to somebody that's at the altar and say, you know something? My flesh doesn't want to do this, but I want to stand humble before God, and I'd like for you to pray with me. And if they say, well, what am I praying for? You can look at them right in the eye and say, it's none of your business. You're okay. It's okay to do that. This is a free time for you to come and be who you are in Jesus and pray for one another. Pray for His grace in your life. Would you stand?